Cool. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody can hear me. Welcome to another day of the free web development and web design bootcamp. My name is Ramon. We're doing this completely for free. If you're tuning in for the first time, don't worry. All of these recordings are going to be on YouTube. Here, let me throw out some links before we get started with today's lesson. So we've got, lots of links. We've got the YouTube channel where you're going to find all of the recordings for this boot camp. That's youtube.com/@badwebsiteclub. If you want to ask questions, talk to each other, we've got both a forum and a Discord channel. You'll find that at these links that I'm throwing into the chat now. Y'all doing okay today? Be sure to tell me where you're tuning in from, how the boot camp's going for you. Maybe talk about the cat in the room, so to speak. We'll talk about that in just a second. Cool. Next, we've got the schedule, which, yes, we need to talk about in just a sec. Hey, learner. So that's badwebsite.club/webdev-bootcamp-2023. Now, you might see that, well, of course, yesterday we had the lesson, we're on week 3, on the Picasso painting, which actually just on the same day that got done, the schedule of, or let's say the lesson structure changed to being now building a cat painting. So some of you might be a little bit bewildered by that. Like I was too. Sorry about that. What we're going to do is find a way to make up this lesson. So if you're, if you want to follow the Picasso painting, fantastic. 2 reminders. First of all, remember that these lessons themselves don't go towards doing the getting the certification. That's the projects. These ones here, the certification projects. So following along with the Picasso painting isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we still want to do good by y'all and have that cat painting. However, today we're going to be doing the responsive web design by building a piano. And I'm quite excited about this. I love music stuff. Here's a preview of what we're going to be building. So we've got drawn with HTML and CSS, a piano. We got some keys. We got the Free Code Camp logo on the piano. It's going to be quite cool. I'm quite excited to build this with you. Now, if there's any questions before we hop in, be sure to stop me. I'm monitoring the chat. But if there's nothing else, let's hop right in. And by hop right in, I'm going to be doing something a little bit sinister. Step 1 looks quite familiar, adding a doc type and HTML. We've done this stuff a couple times, and the purpose of this bootcamp is, of course, to get you unstuck. So what I'm going to do is actually skip a few steps by going right into step 3 when we... I'm looking at the wrong lesson. Pardon me. Let me bring my choreography back. By stepping right into step 3, by which time we've already built out our doc type, our HTML, our head element. This one's quite important. We've established a viewport, so the size of everything looks consistent across devices. But yeah, I've skipped just a little bit ahead so we can dive right into building our piano with HTML and CSS. So let's do that. So we're going to build our piano. We're going to have a whoopsie daisy. There we go. Whew. Yeah, let's try that again. Have our div with the ID set to be piano. And cool, that's nothing all too unfamiliar, I hope. As said, this is live. Feel free to ask any questions if you have them. If not, we'll go ahead and check our code, which passes. We pat ourselves on the back, pat, and we move on to the next one. Great. We're going to add a second div into our existing div and set the class to be keys. Class is set to keys, which again, not terribly unfamiliar. Amazing, pat. Within our keys element, we're going to add 7 div elements, and each of them is going to have the class key. So div class equals key. That's one single key. So there's going to be 7 keys inside our piano, inside our set of keys. going to be lazy and actually duplicate. So we need 7 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nice. Does that work? Excellent. Pat, pat. Cool. Might see this pop up. Remember, this bootcamp is free. Free Code Camp is free. They depend on donations if you can swing them. Like I'm doing this in a separate account where I'm learning rather than this one where I'm teaching. You can donate them $5. You can also come back later. I'm going to do that here. Ask me later. Come back later and contribute if you want to, if you can. So, of course, you remember that the class attribute can have multiple values. So in order to separate our black from our white keys, we're going to add a second class value of black dash dash key. I'm going to add this to the second, third, fifth, sixth, and seventh. So I'm going to do that here. The second one, black dash dash key. And now I'm going to be lazy again. I'm going to copy paste. So the second, third key, the fifth key, the sixth key, and the seventh key. So these keys and these keys are black, and these two are white. So far, so good, I hope. Yep. Does the code agree? Yes. Pat, pat. Now we're going to copy the set of 7 key elements and paste 2 more sets. Cool. So we're going to duplicate that set of 7 keys and just have them be below the other 2. So 1 set of keys, 2 set of keys. Now you might notice, actually, as I'm going really quickly through this, we're not seeing anything yet. And if you're wondering why, that's because even though we've got a bunch of divs, and remember divs, they don't have any content in them. They don't have any height, any width, any text, any background color, nothing. So that's why we're not seeing them show up in our preview. The divs are there. They just don't have any content. So cool. We've set 3 sets of keys, which looks good. Pat, pat. Oh, great. Now we're going to link our CSS. And this is something we've done before. So we've got link rel will be set to style sheet. And the href will be styles.css. There we go. Does that look? No, hold on. I need to close this properly. Link. Does that look good? Amazing. Phew, pat, pat. So browsers can apply default margin and padding values to specific elements. To make sure your piano looks correct, we need to reset the box model. So we'll add an HTML rule. Now we're in our CSS. That says the box sizing property to border box. This is something we're going to be doing a lot of, especially as we're doing art with CSS. Cool, all done. We don't see a difference because, of course, we don't have any content yet. Pat, pat. But this is just to make sure that our margins are behaving consistently and paddings are behaving consistently with across browsers. Now remember, folks, if you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on it, and we'll also do a Q&A at the end. All right, so now that we've reset it, we need to pass that onto elements within as well. So we're going to set the box sizing property to inherit, which will tell the targeted elements to use the same value as the parent element. So we're going to tell all of the elements within our page to also use this box sizing property, which we will inherit from the HTML. However, we're also going to be targeting those pseudo elements. And these are the special elements we've seen before. Every element has a before element and an after element. If you recall from the quiz, this is how we were setting up that content for each P element, right? So even though the P element had its content, in the before element of that P element, we had the content set to question number. So we could have a question number 1, question number 2. And so every P element was going to have that question number as part of its content. And we see that better explained than I tried here. Before is going to create a pseudo element, which is the first child of the selected element. So if we have a P with a before element, that before is part of the P. And there's also an after, which comes after the content of the element we're styling. And oftentimes we use these to create cosmetic content, such as that question number, but also some cool drawing effects, which is what we're going to be seeing here. In any case, we're going to be targeting the star element. Remember star, let me just find my star real quick. Where is my star? Oh no, please, Mr. Keyboard, don't embarrass me. There, whew. There we go. And remember, star is going to target all elements within our DOM or data object model. That is all of the elements in our HTML. And include the pseudo elements with before and after. So we're going to be targeting star as well as star before and star after. And what we're going to be doing here is set the box sizing to be inherit. That is, it's going to be inherited from our HTML. So if that looks good, and again, we're not seeing a difference because all we're doing is setting up the box sizing. We're still not creating any content, but with any luck, our code passes. We tap pad, and we keep moving. All right. Now, it's content time. So we're going to target our piano. Remember, the hashtag means that we're going to be targeting any element with the ID of piano. I'm going to set its background color to be with a hashtag that is hexadecimal color with no red, 47 green, and B11, 1B blue. Still, we don't see it because now we're going to be giving it dimensions. So 900 and a width of 900. There we go. 922 pixels. Still don't see it because we still need our height, which is set to be 290 pixels. Ah, there it is. See, now we can see our piano, but of course it's just one big rectangle now because we still got more drawing to do. So let's submit that, pad, and we keep on drawing with CSS. So we're going to set all of the margin of the piano to be 80 pixels. Now remember, we got two values here. So the first one is the vertical margin, up and down, and the second one is the horizontal margin, left and right. So what are we doing here? The vertical margin is 80 pixels above and below, but the left and right margins are horizontal. That means that as we resize, our piano is always going to be in the middle horizontally, unless the view is really small. By the way, we're going to be doing something about that view being small later. Pat. Great. Now we're going to style our keys. So going to target the dot keys. Remember, dot is the class. Let's set the background color to be hashtag 040404, which if you recall, they're all consistent, the color. So we've got 4 red, 4 green, 4 blue, which means it's going to be a very dark gray. Give it a width property of 949 pixels and a height 180 pixels. Great. There's where our keys will live. But we're not done because I rushed it. Oh, whoopsie. The width should be 949 and not 494. I can read. It's fine. There we go. Pat. All right. So padding left is going to be 2 pixels. 2 pixels. That's a nice short exercise. Amazing. Pat. Keep going. Now we're going to move the keys into position by adjusting the piano selector. We're going to add padding to the piano itself. So this black section here is now going to be a little bit more inside the piano. So we're going to be doing that by setting the padding property to be 90 pixels above, 20 pixels below, 0 and 20 pixels. Let's see how that looks. Cool. So 90 pixels down, 20 pixels to the left. Or what's the margin of the piano again? Of the keys? Padding left 2 pixels. 90, 20, 0, 20. Oh, I see. Yeah, of course. It's Do you know what? I want to look this up real quick because I keep forgetting. This is left. This is sorry. This is down. This is left. This is right, and this is down. Let's look this up real quick. It turns out I've got MDN open right here, and I just want to make sure I understand. Here we go. Top, right, bottom, left. Okay. So top, right, bottom, left. Now I don't quite understand why. Top, right, bottom, left. Oh. You know what? Here's why I was confused. Because I thought, hey, there's no padding at the bottom, but of course, if the padding at the top is 90 pixels down, that doesn't mean that it's going to be all the way at the bottom. See, that was my confusion. There we go. Hey, pat. Learner says trouble. Never trouble. Everything is fine. Now we're going to style our keys. We're going to create a selector for the key. Remember, for the class, we use a full stop. So the background color is going to be hashtag FF, which is the maximum value for each color, which makes white. We're going to set the position of the keys to be relative. The width property is going to be 41 pixels, and the height is going to be 175 pixels. So there we go. We've got one key. It looks a little bit disjointed, but I'm sure we're going to fix that. For now, does that look good? It does. Pat. Oh, thank you, Mitch, for the reminder. That's what learner meant by trouble. Just said the mnemonic was to remember is trouble. Top, right, bottom, left. Oh, that's really good. Wow, see, this is why Jess is a much better teacher than I am. She's got mnemonics. I've just got chaos. Trouble, that's really good. So like TR trouble. That's really good. Thank you. Cool. Move on to the next one. We've got a margin of 2 pixels and a float property set to left. Cool. So margin is 2 pixels and float is set to be left. Look at that. So now we've got all of our keys next to each other. So the floating is saying that, hey, it's kind of like not really relative. It's not really positioned above each other, but rather floating off to the left-hand side. Amazing. There's all of our keys. How cool is that? Let's check our code. Learner's asking, should we even be using floats now? Well, let's see what float is and see what it does. So, Cesium says, whoa, it's so fun to see them all fan out like that. Yeah, right? So let's look at what float does. It places an element on the left or right side of its container, allowing text and inline elements to wrap around it. The element is removed from the normal flow of the page, though still remaining part of that flow, as in contrast to absolute positioning, which we did yesterday. So let's take a look. We've got a float none here. We've got a float right here, and see what happens to this float me element. It kind of just sort of floats on the left as the rest of the content flows around it. And float right does the same, but for the right-hand side. And before Flexbox and CSS Grid were a thing, this was used a lot for positioning elements. Now, what learner's saying here is, hey, it seems to get tricky. And yes, it does. But float still has its place, as we see here for our piano. So now each key is floating to the left-hand side, letting the other keys float around them, which for art is really handy. But of course, this can be also done, I'm sure, with Flexbox or Grid. All right, time for pseudo selectors. So we're going to be styling the pseudo element for the after pseudo element, to be specific, of any key that has the black key class. So any key that has the black key class, we're going to be styling its after pseudo element. And we'll take a look at the dev tool so we can also see a little bit of that. Also, small spoiler, I'm hopefully next week, we're going to have a really amazing guest session on how to use the dev tools of your browser, which I'm really excited about. So we're going to first target our black key after pseudo class. So key black dash dash key after. So this is going to target the after element, pseudo element of any element that has both the class key and the class black key. I'm seeing folks in the chat be excited about that guest session. Yeah, me too. The dev tools are so powerful, and I keep learning stuff about them every day. So cool. Gonna set its background color to be hashtag 1D red, 1E green, and 22 blue. So that's a relatively dark gray. The content will also be set to a blank string. The string is denoted by the quote marks. That means there's no content in it. The reason we're doing it is so that we can override the content of the element. Because by default, these are empty, and the elements will not be rendered on the page. So by setting the content to be an empty string with the quote marks, we're ensuring that it will, in fact, be rendered. But if we'd like to experiment, which, thank you, I would, we can try putting in a heart. Love experimenting. Let's see what happens. Now check this out. Now that I put in a heart as the content, we can see they are appearing. And if you look very closely, you can see the hearts inside there. We're going to make them appear even more clearly by setting this to be a relatively light gray. We're going to set it to AA. Look, there's the hearts. So each element that has the black key will have a pseudo element inside it. We're going to go ahead and inspect here. I hope it's going to be visible. Inspect. Okay. So here's one of our black key classes. Now check it out. Even though there's no content in it per se, notice there's a colon after. This is the after pseudo element that we were talking about. Now we can see I'm hovering over it with my mouse. I don't know why I'm pointing. I'm hovering over it with my mouse, and you'll see that here on the left-hand side, I can't do it both at the same time. There is that heart is being highlighted. And we can also see the CSS that's being applied to it, background color and content heart. So that is how we can style and add content to our pseudo elements. Nevertheless, can I undo? I cannot. Don't know why, but it doesn't matter. We'll just put this color back, set that content to be blank, and leave. Oh yeah, leave everything as is. Fantastic, it passes. We pat. We move on. All right, so we're going to set the position of our after elements to be absolute. Remember, that means it's floating. And the left property to be negative 18 pixels. Let's set a little high there so we can see where it is, right? So they're kind of floating off to the side. And that's kind of like where they go in piano keys, you know? Amazing. So does that work? It looks good. Pat. And we'll keep going. Oh. All right. It is time to render our keys with a width of 32 pixels and a height of 100 pixels. There we go. It is incredible how from one moment to the next, it actually looks like a piano. Amazing. Cool. So what we're doing here is just drawing rectangles. See? Rectangle. And just by having these values of pixels neatly defined, we can position them. And it just blows my mind that by doing this positioning correctly, these keys look so real. Our world is more mathematical than we give it credit for. Amazing. So that's done. Pat. And we can keep going. The piano needs the free Code Camp logo to make it official. So we'll add an IMG element before our keys element. We'll give it a class of logo. The source is going to be set to be this URL, which I see as SVG. It's kind of that means it's a vector graphic, so it can be as big as it wants. And an alt text of the free Code Camp logo. So there we go. Self-closing, of course. Does that work? It passes. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. So we'll start styling the logo by creating a logo selector. We'll set our width to be 200 pixels. Position is going to be absolute. And the top is going to be 23 pixels. That means that we're going to like push it off the top there. Check our code. Looks good. I don't see the logo though, so I'm going to very hesitantly pat. We'll keep going. Great. So the IMG element now needs its parent to have a position set as a point of reference. So we're going to set position to be relative. That's how we can display the absolute. There we go. The absolute element. There we go. Which gives it a nice realistic look. That's amazing. Now we pat much more confidently. So we're going to smooth the sharp edges of the pianos and keys by giving the border, we're going to give the piano a border radius of 10 pixels. And now see, now it's not going to pinch me when I try and play it. Amazing. Pat. Cool. And we're going to give each key a border radius as well, but only in some parts. So 0, going to do treble again, right? So top and right are both 0, 3 pixels for the bottom right. Oh yeah, this is clockwise. So top left, top right, bottom right. You can already see it's rounded here. And then bottom left. Oh, that looks so good. Oh, I love it. Amazing. Pat. Great. Then the after pseudo element, it's going to have the same thing. So border radius of 0, 0, 3 pixels, and 3 pixels. So now the bottom right and bottom left parts of the black keys are also smoothened out, which is nice. Pat. Now we're going to want to be exploring the media rule. And we've seen this once or twice before, but now we're going to start using it properly. This is so exciting. This is called a media query, which lets us apply certain CSS styles depending on the status of the viewport or what we see in the page itself. So, for example, we've got a media query here that says, hey, apply this up until the screen or like the size of the window is 960 pixels. So you can apply this up until the media or the screen or the window is 960 pixels. Then you can apply this. So we're going to be adding a media query that will be applied when the viewport, that is the window or the size of the device you're looking at, is 768 pixels wide and below. So we're going to use the @media, and then in brackets, write the maximum width where this can be applied is 768 pixels. So we can write some CSS here that will be applied only up until 768 pixels. After that, it'll be ignored. And this is how we do responsive web design. This is how we have certain styles for mobile phones and certain styles for watches or certain styles for refrigerators and for computers with small screens, or for computers where, some people are fancy. They like to turn their monitor to be vertical. This applies here too. Amazing. Or when your window is small, of course. Pat. or if you're zoomed in like I am. Okay, this is super exciting. So up until the size of our screen, our window is 768 pixels, we will make the piano have a width of 358 pixels. Look at that. So now the piano is nice and narrow. But the moment that my window is bigger than 768 pixels, that no longer gets applied. And instead, we scroll up real quick. Scroll up, scroll up, scroll up. Where's our piano? Here. This one gets applied instead. So by default, we write some CSS. It applies this style. But lower down, if there is a style that would override it, then it will. So the moment this gets too small, the piano is smaller. And this is how we resize things for smaller screens or bigger screens, depending on how you want to look at it. Cool. So pat. And now we've got a semi-responsive piano. It's not, it's not all the way there, but that's okay. So we will do the same for the keys. Remember, inside our media query, pixels. I forgot to set a width. There we go. Cool. Width is now 318 pixels of the piano. However, the keys are still floating all over the place. Learner's asking, what about foldable and flip phones? So every device, no matter what kind of device it is, if it's a browser, it's going to have a viewport. And so when a phone is opened and then it's got a bigger screen, then it'll get readjusted. It's kind of like when you've got a smartphone and you rotate it. The viewport gets automatically adjusted. And you've probably done this on some websites already where you're like, I can't read everything. I'm going to turn this into landscape mode. When you turn it like this, the phone turns and your browser readjusts its viewport, and then the CSS gets applied dynamically, which is quite cool. So cool. So our set of keys is now narrow as well, but the keys themselves are still floating. So we're going to check our code. That looks good. Pat, mostly good. Oh, okay. We're going to also make the logo on the piano smaller as well on smaller devices. So width is now set to 150 pixels. So check it out. Everything is smaller now. If I make it bigger, boom, it's big again. Make it smaller, it's smaller again. That's a very cute small piano. We're not quite done. The keys are still all over the place. So we'll pat and keep going. So we might have noticed the keys collapse. We can see that here. Actually, it'd be quite cool if the piano would like spit out more keys and you'd have to play like in layers, kind of like an organ, you know? Cool. So what we're going to do in order to fix this issue is we're going to set the overflow to hidden. So when it overflows, it's just not going to show the rest of the keys. This property will hide any element that is pushed outside of the set width value of keys. So let's do that. Overflow is set to hidden. Now, any keys that overflow are just not shown. They're still in the DOM or data object model or the set of HTML itself, but they're just not shown. In fact, we can play around with this with our dev tools, which I would like to do briefly. But look at this. Oh, that looks so cool. Let's open up our dev tools real quick because I would like to take a look at that. All right. Let me just adjust a couple of things here so it can be a little bit easier to see. There we go. All right, check this out. So here's our keys. Cool. It's got a specific width of 318. And we've got one key, another key, another key, another key, and so on and so forth until this key here. The next one, remember, is overflowing and not shown. However, it's still there. It's just not visible. This, of course, calls into question, what do we do about accessibility? And this is probably going to be addressed here. If not, we'll probably explore something. But there is a way to tell, for example, assistive devices, hey, this one here, give it an ARIA property of hidden, and that way a screen reader, for example, is not going to be able to read it out. So let's check our code. Looks good. How are we almost done? Huh. Pat. My goodness. Oh, that's so cool. You can still find. Yeah, it's still there. But of course, for assistive devices, that's less useful because we don't see it and we don't want our other users to see it either. Great. So, so we can also apply media queries for a specific range of width. Excuse me for 1 second. So what we can do is use and here to say, hey, for any devices that are at least 500 pixels, and notice it says min here, and maximum 1,000. So for any device that's between 500 and 1,000 pixels wide, then apply the CSS. So we're going to be adding another media query for any browser window or device or screen that is wider than, so minimum 769 pixels and smaller than 1,199. So we're going to use max width of 1,199 pixels. Whew, okay. Oh, I'm going to remove this. Sorry. Didn't need that. Cool. Media of minimum 769 and maximum 1,199. So if it's smaller than 769, it's not going to apply. And if it's bigger than 1,199, it's not going to apply either. Check our code. Looks good. Pat. I'll keep moving. So for this new media rule, we're going to set the width of the piano to be, so the hashtag piano, to be 760, width of 760. I can read numbers, I promise. 675 pixels wide. And the width of, for the keys element, the width is going to be 633 pixels. Whew. Okay, so what do you have here? For a maximum width of 768, we're going to set this width, but for a minimum of 769, so starting here and all the way to 109 and 1,199 is going to be a little bit bigger. So now we've got an intermediary media query. So we're going to see how that works. This is small. We're going to have medium in a minute. So that now these styles are being applied. And once it gets even bigger, I need more browser. Excuse me, I'm going to widen my window a bit. 1,001, there we go. So now it's at least 1,199, which means, sorry, it's a bit weird to see, but this media query is not being applied because it's bigger than 768 pixels. And this media query isn't being applied because now it's even bigger than 1,199 pixels. So again, now this one's being applied, and now the small one's being applied. And that's how we can have responsive websites on the web. And this is the way almost every website is doing it nowadays. Well, folks, guess what? Our code passes. And I know it says 94%, but remember that I skipped the first two steps. So actually, Pat, we're done with today's lesson. Not bad, huh? And we actually finished a little early. So tell you what, let's take a moment to give you folks a chance to ask some questions. But if not, I might just let you go early today and have a lovely weekend and take it easy. one thing I want to do while we're here is go back to MDN and maybe take a look at some more media query stuff. Because it's actually, there's actually quite a few things we can do, I think, which are quite impressive. I don't want media query list. Let's look at media queries. Could this be? Let's have a look. Media queries. Here we go. I'm going to paste this into the chat for some further learning because it is quite interesting. And here we can see what's up. So these media queries, that min width, max width, and all of that, it depends on the viewport width. So here we can see a certain width for a laptop. Here's a certain width for a mobile phone. And there are lots of things we can do. So let's take a look at this media declaration. Because it's not just mid width and max width. Other things we can do. Yes, exactly. We can have different media types. For example, for all media, you can do a certain things. For printing, because you know how you can print any website from a browser, you can also apply specific CSS for a printer. And I think we might have explored this a couple lessons ago. But yeah, we can actually apply this for printer only for the screen, which means it's not going to be applied to the printer. And there's lots of stuff. Aspect ratio, what colors we can use, depending on, hold on. Wouldn't this be all of the preferred? Yes. Ooh. Remember we did this a few lessons ago with the quiz. Prefers reduced motion. What some users can do with their phones or their browser is tell it, hey, all of those fancy animations and all that, please, I would prefer that websites don't show them. So what we can do as good web developer citizens is use a media query to detect, hey, does this user prefer less motion? And only apply the animation if if this is not being applied. Same goes for color schemes. Yes, this is how we can do light and dark themes. Let me open that up real quick because it's quite interesting. Same goes for contrast. Oh, we're just going to look at a bunch of these. So, for example, for the prefers color scheme media query, we can look at whether the user prefers light mode or dark mode. Now, you might know that some operating systems and phones allow you to have automatic as well. Then the browser will take care of it automatically and be like, yep, I want dark mode, please. And that way, you can have it automatically apply like that, which is quite cool, I think. See, for example, in here, we can have a theme for our website. But if we have the media query where we says, actually, I prefer dark, then it applies different colors for the background and even a nice outline. Let me see how that looks. Check it out. That's theme. Theme A changed if dark preferred. Theme B changed if light preferred, pardon me. I think that's quite cool. Same goes for high contrast. For example, and we looked a little bit at accessibility and high contrast, but what you can even tell your browser and by extension your CSS is like, hey, I actually prefer even more contrasting colors in case, for example, you have, there's been some really interesting research into how folks with astigmatism, if they need corrective lenses, dark mode actually doesn't feel that good. Again, this is what the research suggests. I don't need corrective lessons myself, so I can't tell you from my case. But yeah, so you can have specific styles for folks that prefer actually a really high contrast. Okay, that's my rant. Let's talk about what's going to happen next in the boot camp. So this is the last lesson for this week. We'll be back on Monday to do, learner says range queries are nice. Amazing. Yeah, go check out that documentation. There's some really cool stuff in there. Cool. So we'll be back next Monday to do the technical documentation page. I'll be updating the schedule accordingly. We also need to remember we'll be figuring out a way to make up this lesson because I said yesterday we did the Picasso painting, and yesterday, by coincidence, Free Code Camp replaced that lesson with this cat painting lesson, which is great. I'm super excited to try something new. So keep an eye on that. We'll find a way. If you want to, once again, join the Discord, you can do so through this link here, bit.ly/bwc-discord.invite. If you want to catch up on the lessons, recordings are all on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Bad Website Club. And friends, if there are no questions, I'm going to let you all go to have a relaxing rest of your day. I will wish you a wonderful weekend. We'll keep in touch, and I'll see you on Monday. But until then, bye for now. Sorry to hit the microphone. Bye, everyone.